Jack Straw, foreign minister for Britain, faces government grilling over Bali bombing. Turns out that they, quote, had prior knowledge and told the Bali's government not to warn the people. They also told the Taiwanese found out about it, and the U.S. government told them not to warn the folks in Bali. And the evidence shows that it was a military job, and it looks like it was done to get the Australians behind the war. A tourist bar was targeted full of Australians, and now the Australians are cracking down on their people and taking all of their liberties, just over and over and over again. The families of the victims in Australia aren't sitting down and taking it quietly. They went after the Australian premier at a press conference on the Bali bombing and accused them of having knowledge or being involved. And the evidence is they were. Here's another one from the Associated Press. In 2003, FBI recruited and protected violent informants nationwide for decades. And you read into the article, it's come out in court, the FBI controlled mafia hitmen and controlled the drug dealing on the East and West Coast and had killers going after people that were trying to stop drug dealers. In some cases, police officers that were doing their job were being targeted by FBI agents using organized crime. I mean, folks, and this is the government that wants to take all your liberties under Patriot Act 2. Then you have Russia. Putin was conclusively caught by Moscow police using the new KGB, the FSB, to carry out bombings. And when a Russian media tycoon exposed the story, Putin tried to have him arrested, and he had to flee the country. There are so many other examples of government-sponsored terrorism. They've admitted under Project Shad in the 70s, they sprayed our troops with chemicals and biologicals on ships. Incredible illnesses and even some deaths resulted. They admit that they sprayed U.S. states thousands of times from Alaska to Florida. They just calmly announce it. It's not even a major news headline. That's one of the tactics the propagandists use. They will minimize massive news stories by burying them in the paper and then have 100 reports, about how to bake a cake or roast a turkey. And now the Army and Homeland Security are announcing that they're going to have biological spraying of Bacillus thuringiensis, a dangerous bacteria, over many areas of Oklahoma.
Now, people in Oklahoma have been talking to me about this tonight and saying, anything coming out of a plane landing on my state, I think that seems suspicious. And the folks I've talked to tonight say they're feeling a sense of homeland insecurity.
Again, just setting the precedent. They can spray us whenever they want. Here's another headline. Records, U.S. did open-air biological chemical weapons test in Florida. Again, Associated Press. Chemical weapons test by the U.S. in the 60s against servicemen. Here was a Sunday Herald story out of Britain. Revealed how naval intelligence tested lethal plague bombs off Scotland that then blew into the coastline. Portendown used soldiers for sarin gas test in 1983. Deadly gas. These people died from it. Red Cross faces scrutiny. Sydney Morning Herald. They got caught. The federal government yesterday ordered an inquiry into the deliberate use of potentially contaminated blood to make medical products used by thousands of hospitals, patients, and hemophiliacs. And it says they told people giving blood, we don't care if you have hepatitis C, give us blood, and publicly put it in the blood supply. Here's another one. UN complicit in forced sterilization. Still going on. Eugenics, Nazi programs. They call it bioethics today. Here's another one. Britain toy with ethnic cleansing. Leaders considered forcibly moving Roman Catholics to Irish Republic. This stuff comes out every day. They just calmly announce it. They're behind all the terror. We've never found a terrorist incident of any real size or scope that was carried out by anyone but the government. There's a few lone nuts that do a few badly coordinated, tiny attacks, but every major attack is controlled by the globalists and their provocateurs. I just want you to realize who we're dealing with, who we're facing here, America. A bunch of criminal hoodlums, military-industrial complex minions using Madison Avenue advertising, propaganda, brainwashing techniques to neutralize opposition to the New World Order. They got you to deny its existence while they were building this worldwide police state for total enslavement. Now it's upon you, and they're saying accept it or the terrorists are going to get you. Wake up, man. Your kids are worth it. The truth is getting out to the American people. And as the liberals and the conservatives wake up to the fact that we have manufactured consent in this country, and that there's no real debate about serious issues, just simply staged theatrical events, we can begin to get our Bill of Rights and Constitution back. All Americans should be constitutionalists because the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence state the facts of history. Governments become tyrannical. They attempt to dominate populations, and they must be resisted. And mistrust of government, a watchful nature, must be promoted and supported in a country if it's going to be free. Elites throughout history have wanted just a few things: to expand their control and to maintain that control, and to block any rivals to that control. And to do that, they have to dumb down populations. They have to create terrorist acts to scare them into submission. And the New World Order is simply the latest in a long line of empires, of strong men, of king rats that have attempted to dominate and abuse their populations. And they can't help it. They will always abuse their populations because their own minions, their own servants, their own enforcers enjoy abusing people. They're sadistic, and they like to expand their own little mini empires inside of a tyrannical, dehumanizing, total enslavement program. It is the law of the jungle. It is the law of world history. And as a great statesman said, those that don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I know this: resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Let's look at the Patriot Act 1 and 2 and what Homeland Security sets up here in the United States. Using the pretext of terror, in the wake of September 11th tragedy, the federal government passed the Patriot Act 2. Members of Congress were not even allowed to read it. They were ordered by committee chairmen to go out on the floor and vote for something they had never read. Patriot Act 1 destroyed large sections of the Bill of Rights. It annihilated the First, Third, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, seriously damaged the Seventh and the 10th. Now there's Patriot Act 2. As if Patriot Act 1 wasn't good enough. Congressman Ron Paul, when speaking to Insight magazine, told them that no member of Congress was allowed to read the first Patriot Act that was passed by the House on October 27, 2001. The first Patriot Act was universally decried by civil libertarians and constitutional scholars from across the political spectrum. William Safire, while writing for the New York Times, described the first Patriot Act, its powers, by saying that President Bush was seizing dictatorial control. On February 7, 2003, the Center for Public Integrity, a nonpartisan public interest think tank in D.C., revealed the full text of the Domestic Security Enhancement Act of 2003. The classified document had been leaked to them by an unnamed source inside the federal government. The document consisted of a 33-page section-by-section analysis and the accompanying 87-page bill. And all this time, after they were caught, the White House tried to deny it.
There is not a proposed Terrorist Act 2.
Then it turned out the bill had actually already been introduced as S-22 by the Democrats. In fact, the title was almost identical. Whereas the House version was the Domestic Security Enhancement Act, the Senate version was the Justice and Domestic Security Enhancement Act of 2003. The only difference with the Senate version is it's full of gun control laws, like Our Lady of Peace Act that registers gun owners, a national ballistics database, shuts down private sellers at gun shows. It just dwarfs the 1968 Gun Control Act. And by the way, Republicans are supporting this legislation. S-89 has also been introduced. It's the Universal National Service Act of 2003. And let me tell you, it's the hallmark of a command and control society. The description of the bill is to provide for the common defense by requiring that all young persons in the United States, including women, perform a period of military service or civilian service in furtherance of the national defense and homeland security and for other purposes. We have looked at some of the programs that the federal government has already been setting up for national service here in the new homeland, and they include East German-style tattletale squads of every type, which are just basically a super tips program. It's similar to programs they've had in Russia since Stalin's era and continuing to this day, where they take junior high and high school students and train them in warrant service, gun confiscation, tax police, fugitive apprehension, you name it. Literal Hitler-Jugend brown shirts.
taking 11-year-old children and teaching them the finer points of collecting taxes.